So now I'm going to throw a wrench in everything I've said up to now. I told you earlier, a lot of the questions are, it depends. And there's little hacks you can do to combine different brands of triggers, okay? So let's say that you did this. Let's say you bought a Nikon flash or a Canon flash when you first bought your camera. Oh, cool, I got my SB whatever 5000 flash. Or in the Canon world, I got my EX, 600, something like that. Great. Oh, but I just bought this Amazon flash and it was 28 bucks. Cool. So now I've got two flashes and they're dissimilar in their communication protocol. And then someone came up to you and said, hey, I've got this old set of Alien Bs and you want them? They're only 250 bucks. You're like, oh, cool. I get two big studio lights. So now you've got, the Nikon or Canon, you got this eBay tool, and then you've got these studio lights from Alien Bs. How can you make it all work together? Well, you can, and I want to show you how that works. The key is to find a communication protocol that's the lowest common denominator. Maybe that is a pulse of light. Most flashes have a built-in slave so that when they see a pulse of light, they will actually fire. Cool. That can be your lowest common denominator. If that's the case, then all you have to do is find some way on your camera body to send out a pulse of light, and that will trigger everything in the studio to receive it and fire off. Cool. Maybe everything will work on a radio system, or maybe you bought these Yongnuos and you can put a little Yongnuo on each of these remote flashes that you have. But that's the key. The key is to find a way that everything can communicate from this base camera. So let me show you how we can do that. I'm going to pull over a Pro Photo here and just show you how I can get a Pro Photo to communicate with a Nikon and an Amazon flash, okay? Put that on there just for safekeeping. All right, we'll do a Pro Photo with a little soft box. And I'll turn this to the camera so the camera can see what's going on here. I'm going to turn it on. And you can see on this side, it's got the modeling light. So I'm just going to turn the modeling light off right now just to keep it simpler for us to, oh, there we go. Simpler for us to see what's going on. Okay. Slave mode. And if you look right there, you'll see the slave mode has radio and IR. What's IR? Infrared. Basically optical. Light from any other pulse of light, IR will trigger. So you can see these Pro Photos have two ways I can trigger them built into the head itself. If I push this button, I can trigger it with only radio, like I have here, or I can trigger it with only optical light or infrared, or I can turn it on both, and now it'll trigger anytime it gets a radio signal or it sees a little pulse of light. Interesting. So good on Pro Photo for giving me those options. So now let's pull over another flash. I'll bring just a simple umbrella like this. Okay, so this one here. And I'm just going to let's put that. Okay, so here's the Amazon flash. So what do we have built into the Amazon flash? Well, we've got mode called S1, and then we've got another mode that I haven't really talked about yet called S2. So for this, I'm going to use S1, and S1 is just the very basic slave mode. As soon as this guy sees a pulse of light, it's going to fire. Well, what is S2? Well, now it gets complicated, and I hesitated talking about this earlier because I didn't want to confuse the conversation, but S2 works in the Nikon and Canon wireless system when your other flashes are in TTL mode. See, when they're in TTL mode, you remember what happens? The cameras send out a pre-flash, and then that comes back to the camera, and then the camera says, okay, now do the real flash. Well, S2 mode ignores all that pre-flash communication and fires when it's time for the real flash. Oh, how cool is that? So I lied to you earlier. You can use these manual flashes sometimes in the fully automated TTL system, but it requires a little bit of forethought and knowledge. Today, I'm not going to do that because that's just too much. So I'm just going to keep this guy in S1 mode, S1. And I've got these little feet, these little tripod feet. Screw that thing on there like that. Put that here into the umbrella. And now we've got slave mode on. Flash number 2. Okay, and I'm just going to test it out real quick. I won't pull in a model quite yet. Let's just see if that's going to work. Let's just make sure everything fires. So to do that, I'll aim this way. On top of my ProPhoto Air remote here, there's a test button. So I'm just going to push test. So that one fired. Cool. But it looks like my Amazon Basics one in slave mode is not firing. I wonder why. Well, the reason why is probably because it's not sensing the light. So a lot of times these sensors, on this flash, this sensor is actually in the front of the flash. So I got to turn the body over that way so it can see. And let's see if it's going to work now. And I'll turn it up too. I'll turn the power up just to see if it works. Still not going. We'll try slave 2 mode, see if it works. And our Amazon Flash has ceased operation. We'll try it this way, see if that works. Huh, interesting. It worked. So it's firing when I push the test button. Okay, so here's what we've learned. The little slave sensor on the flash is not that sensitive. Maybe it's proximity, maybe there's something else going on. So maybe we throw in this radio trigger. Let's just try that. You know, this type of thing happens all the time when you're trying to mix and match brands of flashes. So I'll put on my Yongnuo. Remember now, I don't want this guy to be a slave flash anymore. I want it to be a manual flash. There we go. Turn on my Yongnuo. Make sure it's speaking on channel 1, group A, and it is. Throw that in there. Now you see what I've done here on the camera is I've got my Yongnuo stacked with my ProPhoto. So they're speaking through each other. Now, bam. So I've got radio control going to my ProPhoto through the ProPhoto proprietary system. And I've got a different technology radio control going to my Amazon Basics flash through its own proprietary system. Sometimes, oops, stepping on my cable, sometimes this works. Sometimes it doesn't work. Let's say that it didn't work. Well, I can actually pull my ProPhoto off. And remember the ProPhoto, remember it has a typical slave trigger? Now I'm going to trigger that guy. Oh, and that saw the pulse of light and it fired. So is that making sense? I'm just finding the communication protocol that will get everything to work together. And I found it. Now I can go off and I can add more flashes.
Could you try a donut on the Amazon Flash?
Peanut?
A peanut, yes. Not a
I
donut.
would love to try a donut on the back of the Amazon Flash.
Me too.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that. Actually, it's a really good suggestion. All right, so what she said is, why don't we put this little peanut on the base of the Amazon Flash and see if it triggers it. There we go. Take off my Yongnuo. Another nice thing you get when you buy the Nikon and Canon flashes is they have these nice little flip lock levers to make it easy to pull them on and off. All right, there we go. Now here's the downside of this also. This doesn't have a locking mechanism. So I need to screw it on there. I could probably speed up the process just by firing it in my hand, but this makes for good visuals. All right, it's got a 1/4 by 20 thread on the bottom, which is great. All right, so I'm gonna put the peanut receiver eye pointed over that way, turn the flash head into the umbrella, and now, okay, now what do I need to do? What type of trigger do I need to have on top of my camera? Oh, shoot, the Yongnuo won't work anymore because I don't have anything receiving it. So now I have to go to my Pro Photo. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my Pro Photo. All right, so now I got my Pro Photo on there. And when I trigger this, my Pro Photo should fire. And it looks like that's not working. Oh, I would help if I put it in the right mode, manual mode, and make sure it tests. Okay. All right, so now I'm gonna push the test on my Pro Photo. Huh. Looks like that little flash is not happy for us today for some reason. Yeah, question.
Could it be that it's a grid on the Pro Photo and the light's not getting over there?
Could be. Why don't we blast it directly? Nah, there's something else going on. You know what I bet it is? I bet it's just not, I bet the pins are not aligning all the way. Yeah. So that's another good point. And this happens a lot when I buy third-party flashes. The communication pins on the bottom sometimes don't line up perfectly with these generic products. So like this is a very generic a peanut. It's designed to work with just about anything. So maybe the pins aren't aligning properly. So that's okay. I can throw it. But you notice the pins did work with that little Yongnuo radio trigger. Therein lies one of the problems of mixing and matching all different types of flash equipment. You just never quite really know until you get it in your hands and in your studio if it's actually going to work together. Let's throw on a Nikon SB910, okay? So here's the Nikon SB910. I'm gonna just turn it on, and then I'm gonna go to manual power, throw this on the little peanut or donut. Now you got me hungry for donuts. All right, and let's see if that works. Yeah, maybe the peanut is defective. Okay, so that's working. Okay. That normally works. Of course, we're live on TV, so it's not working. But let me show you one other way to trigger this whole setup. So let's say that we were using this was working, the little peanut was working, and this slave receiver here is working. Another way you can do this inexpensively is to put any flash on your camera. So here we're going to use Mr. Amazon. And I'm going to set up this flash to just be manual output. And it's going to put out a pulse of light at kind of minimum power. And I'm just going to shoot this up into the air. So watch what happens when I hit test. Well, there. So when this, see it pulses and that receives it. And if I had some technology on that had a peanut that worked, that one would trigger as well. So that's another very inexpensive way to have a trigger on your camera that triggers the whole studio. You just have to find a way to get the light from here to kind of spread out onto the scene. How do you do that? Well, there's these diffusion domes that you can buy, and I like using those, and that just kind of sends the light all around the world. So that's interesting, huh? Trying to get it all to work together. I think that's instructive also. As frustrating as it is, it's instructive to know that you may have to struggle through this as well at home when you're trying to put it together.
What would you do if this is happening when you're out on a photo shoot?
Oh man, not if. It's like every photo shoot this stuff happens. Practice, practice, practice. You know, you're always, for me, I'm practicing this stuff at home. And to be honest, before this class that I taught, in my studio where I'm at, I put all of this together, and I was trying every conceivable combination. It was all working just fine. But this will happen, and it will happen on location when when you've got a paying client staring at you in the face saying, "What's going on?" So the key is, back to an earlier slide, you have to know the technology. And you see right there, I was able to mix and match different technologies to get it to work. I'm like, okay, I fundamentally understand how this trigger is working. I get it. I understand everything in the background for why it works this way. And when it fails, then I can go to a different technology that I do understand also how it'll work. So that's what I do, is I just bring along backups. I bring along maybe a couple of different types of triggers. People who photograph sports in big venues, professional sports, a lot of times there's so much radio interference in the venue that things like pocket wizards and other technologies have a hard time communicating. And that's where I said sometimes you just have to go to the old school method of just wires, just wiring everything up together. It's painful, but as a professional photographer, you have to bring along those backups. If you're an amateur and you're just doing this because it's fun, well, okay, tell your neighbor to come back tomorrow and you'll make them some brownies to make up for their lost time. Yeah, good question. Others?
Do you are you able to control the individual pro photos separately with the commander, the pro photo commander?
Yes, you are. That's the neat thing about the ProPhoto system, is that you can say this one, they allow up to 6. So I can make this one up a little bit or down a little bit right from that Air remote, which is cool. The alternative is just going up to each individual flash and just rotating it. And each of these numbers means stops. So 6 is 1 stop brighter than 5. Yeah, ProPhoto is great. It's a little bit out of the scope of the class today. I'm not going to really spend a lot of time talking about this type of gear, but I just want to show you that you can integrate it all together. And all the time, I use my Nikon and my Nissan and my Amazon flashes with my ProPhoto gear. And they do a great job. The key isn't necessarily the flash itself. The key is your application and technique with your lighting modifiers. I want to talk conceptually about the types of lights we need to think about for photography. So today is all about 2, 3, 4, and 5 lights. So typically we have 4 different types of lights in a typical photo studio. One light's called the key light. One light's called the fill. Another one's called the hair light, or we call it a kicker or a rim. And then the last light is called the background light. So I want to show you kind of step by step what each of those lights are, what they mean, and how they're used. So, all right, I need a model. Which of you, you want to be our model for this one? All right, come on up. Would you like to sit on the orange chair or the posing stool? All right, why don't you sit on the posing stool? And I will move some of the stuff out of the way. so people can see. Actually, I'm going to move this out back so it's out of our way. And for this, I'm going to use these Pro Photos because they have the modeling light, okay? Actually, I'm going to have you come this way. Why don't you walk this way about 3 or 4 feet? Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about studio and set design today, but to have a full-on studio with 5 lights, you really need to have about 25 to 30 feet to work with in a studio. A lot of people want to convert a bedroom or even a garage to a studio. You can do a garage, but if your garage is 20 feet long, then you've got issues. 20 feet is the bare minimum. So I like 30 feet, and for today, I'm going to be working in about 20 feet worth of space. So I've got her set up about 6 feet away from the backdrop, and I usually measure that, just hold out my arms and kind of put the chair about there. That allows me space in the background to set up these background lights. Cool. And then you can see if I bring a light out here in the front like that, well, already I'm at 15 feet. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the modeling light and show you what the key light is and how that works. Modeling light on. Oh, alrighty. So the key light is the most important light. It's the number one light you're always thinking of. Key, meaning key, like number one, first. The key light creates the look and the feel. So the key light is what you use to design the ambiance of the photo, or the look on the face, the shadows. Where do the shadows fall? So let's just look at how this key light impacts the image. Okay, so you go ahead and look straight ahead, just look straight out that way. And I'm going to move this key light around. And here you can see the shadow is darkening kind of that side of the face. So maybe this is a little bit more mysterious look. And now I move the key light here. Okay, a little more straight on. You can see her face is fuller. If I move the key light down low, okay, you can see I can mess with the shadows. So the key light's the number one light that you place. Everything else bases off of that key. When your key light goes higher, so your key light goes up here, you can get kind of deeper shadows underneath the eyes. When your key light's lower, it's more straight on. You can have your key light, and we're going to talk about lighting modifiers. Key lights can be umbrellas, they can be soft boxes, they can be beauty dishes, they can be anything you want. They can even be a direct hard flash. But that's always my first decision, the key light. Okay, next, the fill. Fill is a good guy. Fill helps out the key light, okay? So maybe I'm going to do something like this, a little bit high, and I'm looking at her catch light in her eye, just seeing where that falls. So I got a nice catch light in her eye, just like that. But now, pardon me, as I come over here, we can see this side is in shadow. And maybe I want that. Maybe I want this kind of stark look. So I'm going to, or maybe I don't. Maybe I want to add some more fill. So the fill is just as it's described. It's filling in the shadows. So to do that, I'll bring over this Pro Photo with the modeling light. There's no rule as to where that fill light needs to go. There's a lot of ish. Like, I kind of like it here, I kind of like it there. Whoa. Let's go to proportional. There we go. Okay, yeah, I'll do about that. So you can see as I add in the fill, I can make that fill. Are we about even on the front for brightness? Actually, the fill is a little bit too bright right now. Drop that down. One of the neat things about the Pro Photo gear is that you can do, as opposed to maybe like a Nikon or Canon flash, is you get to see in real time what the light looks like, because they have that modeling light feature. Yeah, so fill. I just need to decide how much fill I add. I can move it farther away, Can move it in closer, can lower it, can raise it, okay? So that's the fill. Later today, we're going to talk about, where specifically where to place it, but for now, at least you get the idea. The next light in our setup is a hair light. So I don't have multiple pro photos here today. I don't have more than 2, so we're just going to show you this with 2. Hair light. A lot of times with the hair light, you want to light up the back of the hair. Now this works really well with people who have longer hair. For guys like me who have really short hair, the hair light's really not that significant in the overall exposure. But if I add this, I don't know, are we picking that up on that camera? You seeing that hair light? Okay, cool. So the whole idea with the hair light or the rim light or the kicker is to provide some visual separation between the subject's shoulder and the background. Its whole purpose is separation. This little rim here kind of highlights that and gives you a nice little outline, maybe over the shoulder or just on the hair. Now, the hair light can be tighter like this, like what I've got here, this little modifier that's on here. It can be broader like an umbrella or a softbox, or it can be super tight like a snoot. And I'll show you what a snoot does later today. Like maybe you only want the hair light to just be right here. And maybe you don't want it to go along the whole side, okay? So you just need to decide where you want that hair light to be. So that hair light can be positioned up high like I just showed you. It could be directly behind her, down low, like this, pointed up. Okay. It can be up on a boom. So there's no rule. It's all about the look that you want and the overall feel that you're trying to convey. The last light that I'll show today is what we call the background light. Well, the background light is designed, again, as a separation tool. Okay. So that background light, a typical studio, you're going to want either 1 or 2 background lights. If you want what I would call a professional studio, you're going to want 2 background lights. And here's why. Check this out. That background light, you can see, doesn't evenly light up the whole backdrop. So if I have 2 lights, what that allows me to do is to position one light over here and another light over there, and now I've got good even lighting for the whole backdrop. A typical professional studio has got a key light, a fill, hair, and 2 background lights. Those are our lights. So the next segment, and then as we move into the live shooting portion of the day, I'll be piecing all those together, and you'll see how it all works for a beautiful portrait. So thank you. Thank you very much.
These came in kind of throughout this first segment. And so On the Hook asked, is it possible to break sync speed with optical triggers? And I know we haven't really talked about sync speed yet, but.
Yeah, so it depends on the camera you're using. If you're using a traditional DSLR type camera that actually has a mirror and a physical shutter that goes up and down, you're pretty much stuck at what we'll call the maximum shutter sync speed, which is anywhere from about a 200th of a second to a 250th of a second. Sometimes you can cheat that by a little bit, like to a 3/20th of a second. I know specifically in the Nikon world, a lot of my cameras, I can cheat it to a 3/20th, but I can't really go to a 1,000th of a second or 2,000th or 5,000th. Now, I think there might be some other cameras, maybe the Sony, maybe the Fuji, I don't know, that you can go much higher shutter speeds, but I'm not a Sony user and I'm not a Fuji user, so I can't talk specifically to those cameras. It's all camera body dependent.
Great, thank you. And let's see. Sunrise is asked, for the number of backlights, does it matter what type of shot you're making, like a headshot versus a full body shot, that type of thing?
Yeah, it was for the background. That was the question? Yeah, it totally matters. In fact, today I'm going to show you that. If I'm doing a really tight headshot, then for your background light, you might want to use a snoot to really position your lighting exactly behind the head. You know, a really neat look these days is to kind of have almost a halo of light behind the head. I'll show you how to do that today, and you do that by controlling the size of that background light. So today, for the background, I'm going to be using umbrellas. I'm going to be using softboxes. I'm going to be using these zoom heads. I've got a zoom head on that Pro Photo. I'm using snoots and grids just to show you how big of an impact they actually have on the look of the photo. I often say to people that in general, photography in general, the background is almost as important as the subject. So whether that's macro photography, if you're a bird photographer, if you're a portrait photographer, the background, you have to put as much mental energy into what that looks like as you do the subject itself.
I have a couple of questions for you that we've given people the answers online, but just to say it on air, can you talk about what you are wearing
Yes.
there? And then also, people were wondering what type of batteries you use.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so first thing is I'm using this spider holster. This spider holster is pretty awesome. I love it because it's rock solid. And what it does is it's got this little tab here, and it goes into this holster, and it just hangs on my hip. All the weight for everything I'm carrying today is on my hip versus on my shoulders or around my neck. Working in the studio, it makes a lot of sense to have everything around here. I don't always use this when I do a lot of outdoor and nature photography. I have a different system that I use for that, but I love the spider holster for studio work. They also have these really cool pouches, and I can put this 70 to 200 f2.8 in the pouch with the lens hood extended and swap it out maybe with my 24 to 70. So it's a really neat setup. Thanks, Spider Holster, for making such a great product. I don't think you mentioned this, but Tether Tools, also one of our cool partners here at Creative Live. I love Tether Tools for shooting in the studio. Their equipment is, again, it's rock solid and it just works. As a working pro, you can't have your gear fail on you like that Flash did earlier. But their Tether Tool stuff always works. So that's this cable here, this tether. And then for batteries, I use rechargeable batteries, and I use nickel metal hydrides. So these nickel metal hydrides you can buy just about anywhere now. If you are buying them, I recommend what are called low discharge nickel metal hydrides. And what that means is they're stable in the case. So a lot of the older nickel metal hydrides, you'd charge them up, and then like 7 days later, 10 days later, they'd lose some of their charge. But the low discharge units, they'll hold their charge for a long time in my camera bag. So the ones, specifically the ones I have, are called Imedion, Imideon, Imedion. And there's another company that I like. They're called Eneloop, Eneloop, Eneloop. I think they're made by Sanyo. And then, don't tell anyone this, but sometimes I use regular alkalines. You know, buy like a big old case of them from my local big box retailer, and I'll just use those as backups in case. Whenever maybe I'm on location, I don't really have power, I'll just throw in those alkalines.